Priyanka.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to just keep it here. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Ava. She's 16 years old. An age where girls should be enjoying their innocence and joys of their youth. But she, at such a tender age, understands the importance of being a voice for her peers, an advocate for young girls and women around the world who may not have the opportunities that us sitting over here have. So receiving this honor from a hero like her makes this so much more exceptional. So thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, and wow, I am so privileged and so honored to be sharing this afternoon with all of you and these incredibly amazing women that are being honored today. I'd like to extend my congratulations to each one of you, Octavia, Michelle, Kelly, Patty, and all 50 women that have been included in the Impact Report. Your achievements not just inspire me, but also so many others to work harder, to be better, and to make a dent wherever we can. So I'm very, very proud to be standing alongside of you. So in life, you know, there are moments when you stop and ask yourself, how did I get here? Like, why am I standing here? Well, this is definitely one of those moments for me. And I find myself going back to the beginning, back to my roots. I was born to incredible parents, amazing parents who served as doctors in the Indian Army. I was the firstborn, and as far back as I can remember, I made my parents very proud and happy 99% of the time. Okay, slight exaggerations of personal achievements are allowed from time to time, don't you think? My brother was born a few years later, and even then, nothing changed for me. We were both given equal opportunities, and I want to emphasize this. I want to really emphasize this for you because I don't think a lot of people might understand that being equal might seem very normal. But where I come from, India, and a lot of developing countries around the world, more often than not, this is an exception. It's actually a privilege. My first experience of the glaring disparity between boys and girls came at a very, very young age. I grew up in a middle-class family with extremely philanthropic parents who constantly reminded me and my brother how lucky we were and how giving back to those who were less fortunate was not a choice. It was a way of life. Simple. I was 7 or 8 years old when my parents started taking me on these visits in a traveling clinic to developing communities around and villages around the city that we lived in called Bareilly. We were packed into this ambulance, and my parents would provide free medical care to people who couldn't afford it. My job at the age of 8 was assistant pharmacist. So I would count all the medicines, put them in an envelope, and give it out to patients, and I really took my job very seriously, very seriously. But the more I went on these expeditions, the more I began to notice the simplest things that distinguished a boy from a girl, or a man from a woman. For example, girls were pulled out of school when they hit puberty because they were considered ready for marriage and babies. That's 12 and 13, while boys still enjoyed their childhood. Or basic human rights, such as healthcare, were denied just because they were women. Let's call this whole experience trigger number 1 for me. Fast forward a few years and many, many triggers in between. Like a producer-director, for example, early on in my career, I must have been about 18 or 19, telling me that if I didn't agree to the ridiculous terms or painfully low salary in his movie, that he would just replace me. Because girls are replaceable in the entertainment business. That was a memorable one. Made me decide to make myself irreplaceable. But I think what really moved the needle for me and ultimately led me to create the Priyanka Chopra Foundation for Health and Education, and around the same time partner with UNICEF, was an encounter with my housekeeper's daughter. About 12 years ago, I came home from set early one day, and she was sitting in my library reading a book. And she must have been 8 or 9 years old, and I knew she loved reading. So I asked her, I was like, it's a weekday, why aren't you in school? And she said, oh, I don't go to school anymore. So I went and asked her mother, and I said, why isn't she in school? And her mom said that her family couldn't afford to send her and her brothers to school, so they chose the boys. The reason: she would eventually get married, and it would be a waste of money. I was completely blown, and it shook me to my core. Eventually, I decided to cover the cost of her education so that she could continue to learn, because education is a basic human right. And a huge necessity, especially today. From that point on, I was determined to make a difference in as many children's lives as I could, in whatever big or small way that I could contribute. There's a really, really beautiful quote that I read recently, and I think it's absolutely appropriate to explain what I'm trying to say today. The hand that rocks the cradle, the procreator, the mother of tomorrow, a woman shapes the destiny of civilization. Such is the tragic irony of fate that a beautiful creation such as a girl child is today one of the gravest concerns facing humanity. Girls have the power to change the world. It is a fact, and yet today, girls are more likely than boys never to set foot in a classroom, despite of all the efforts and progress made over the last 2 decades. I'm just going to give you a stat, more than 15 million girls of primary school age will never learn how to read or write, compared to 10 million boys. Primary school, it's the beginning of our future. Over the last 11 years, I have witnessed firsthand the incredible work that UNICEF does for children around the world, especially victims and survivors of child marriage, displacement, war, sexual violence. But there is still so much work to do. And for me, that is the fuel to my fire. The reason I'm so committed to this cause, and that is where my passion stems from, because I know that a girl's education not just empowers families, but communities and economies. A result of her education, we all do better. It's just as simple as that. As entertainers and influencers sitting in this room, I feel that it's our social responsibility to be a voice for the voiceless, which is why I applaud each and every woman in this room for being such a badass. For using your platform and your voice to contribute to change, and for ensuring that there is not even one lost generation as long as we are alive. I'd like to thank Variety and all of you for encouraging me and all of us in this room to keep going and fighting on. Thank you so much.
This is the health report. Americans can eat an egg a day without feeling guilty. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health and Human Services recently released new dietary guidelines. They are updated every 5 years. The guidelines are designed to help set nutritional standards for school lunch programs and federal food aid. The new guidelines say a healthy person can eat up to 7 eggs a week. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says 1 large chicken egg has about 186 milligrams of cholesterol. Most of that is in the yolk, the yellow center of the egg. The report says The human body makes cholesterol on its own, so people do not need to eat eggs or other food to get cholesterol. The report provides other advice about staying healthy through diet. It calls for limiting added sugars to just 10% of calories per day. Natural sugars, such as those in fruit or milk, are not considered added sugars. The report also talks about saturated fat calories. These can be found in red meat, butter, cheese, whole milk, and ice cream. Calories from saturated fats should also be limited to less than 10% of total calories each day. The guidelines also suggest Americans move away from a diet full of animal protein and sodium or salt. The guidelines suggest a diet containing more fruits, vegetables, and nuts. The report also mentions the importance of physical activity in improving health. It says that physical activity can reduce your risk of disease. This is the economics report. In 2009, the U.S. automobile industry was close to collapse. It was during the biggest economic downturn in more than 80 years. People stopped buying new vehicles. At the time, financial help from the government saved several auto manufacturers from closing. Now, 7 years later, a reformed auto industry is open for the public to see. American auto companies are putting their vehicles on display at the 2016 North American International Auto Show in Detroit, Michigan. But there is more to see than just new cars and trucks. The biggest news at this year's auto show is not about the outside of the autos. Michael Caudill, a U.S. automotive expert, says it is what manufacturers are planning to put inside them. He says every automaker at the show is launching some form of cool technology inside the vehicles. Caudill's examples include a special type of cruise control, smart stop technology, and even 3D, that's three-dimensional, printing to print out and create the interior of your vehicle. Much of what customers will find in an auto dealer's showroom this year is at the Detroit Auto Show. This includes vehicles that are large but use little fuel. Caudill says the fuel side of the business is a big part of what automakers are doing. He says customers want to know how many miles they can get on one tank of gasoline. A tank of gasoline is much cheaper today. That is because of the worldwide drop in oil prices. In many parts of the U.S., gasoline is less than $2 a gallon. Even so, Caudill says, electric-powered vehicles and motors that use less fuel are still important on the show floor.
This is the Technology Report. Improvements in electronics for automobiles are making them safer and smarter. Many new car models are designed to go a long way on just a little gas. But all of them are using technology that makes driving safer and easier. The new Ford Escape has technology that helps avoid crashes. The cruise control system changes the car's speed to keep a safe distance from other cars. It works by using electronic signals in the side and front of the car. These signals measure its distance from other vehicles. Drivers can connect to the electronic system through the dashboard or with their smartphones. A smartphone can start the car from a distance and find it from anywhere. Other companies are also developing technology to make driving safer. The Heedful Audio Alert System, or HAAS, warns drivers when emergency vehicles are near. CEO Corey Hose says crashes with emergency vehicles are a major problem. The device senses the sound of an emergency vehicle siren. It then sends a warning to the driver's phone or other connected device when an emergency vehicle is in the area. A company called Sober Steering has developed a device to stop people from driving if they have been drinking alcohol. The device can detect alcohol in the skin. If the driver's alcohol level is too high, it shuts down the vehicle. Sober Steering sells the device to companies that operate many large vehicles, like truck and bus companies. On the road, connected technology is becoming the way of the future. This is the Science Report. 3 university students in Santiago, Chile, have come up with a green way to produce power. They developed a device that uses soil to charge mobile phone batteries. The device can also power other small electronics. The engineering students got the idea while relaxing outside, taking a break from their exams. The batteries on their mobile phones were empty. One of the student inventors, Evelyn Aravina, noted that plants are living things and able to produce energy. Their invention is a small circuit board they call Ikaya. The Ikaya solved 2 problems for the engineering students. They needed to come up with a class project. They also needed an outlet to plug in their phones. The Ikaya captures the energy plants produce during a process called photosynthesis. That occurs when a green plant turns water and gas into food or energy as the plant is exposed to light. A plant uses only a small part of that energy to grow. The rest stays in the soil. One of the student inventors says the device changes the energy released from the plant into low-level power to charge phones. The e-Kaya device collects the extra energy from the plant without harming it. It plugs into the soil and then into a mobile phone. The e-Kaya is able to fully recharge a mobile phone battery in less than 2 hours. The inventors hope that the technology can one day be used for much bigger projects, like public parks. They imagine the power for the park's street lamps coming from its own trees and plants. This is the Education Report. Experts say one of the most important technologies of the future is drones. Drones are flying devices with no pilot. The number of jobs for people who know how to design, build, and control them is increasing. Because of this, several U.S. universities and colleges are offering degrees in unmanned aerial systems, or UAS. One is the University of Washington in Seattle. Christopher Lum is a research scientist with the Flight Systems Laboratory there. Lum helps students explore how drones can safely share the skies with other aircraft. However, the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, is creating new rules to control the use of drones. The FAA is the part of the U.S. government that controls air travel and air traffic. A new federal rule requires that all drones be registered by the middle of February. People who do not register their drones could face fines of up to $20,000. Changing rules could also present problems for students looking for experience as drone pilots. One problem for many schools is finding a legal place to fly the drones. Students at Blue Mountain Community College in Pendleton, Oregon, fly inside the college building used for sports. Lum says they also test drones inside a building at the University of Washington. He says it takes a very long time to get official permission to fly outside. He says it can take months. Lum and some of his students recently moved their research to Australia. Australia has fewer rules governing unmanned aerial systems.
This is the Technology Report. Learning to play the guitar requires a lot of practice, hard work, and, in the beginning, hands that hurt. Playing the air guitar is a lot easier. Without holding a real guitar, you copy a musician's hand and arm motions. But that does not produce any sound. Now, researchers from Goldsmiths, University of London, and the University of Sussex have built a digital instrument using motion technology. It turns air guitar motions into music. Saran Gunatilaka is co-founder of Curve Music. They developed the digital air guitar. He says they started by mixing different motion devices like gyroscopes and magnetometers. They combined that with a mobile phone. The mobile phone has the power to play music combinations as a person motions them. This is how it works. A small pad with 8 buttons fits in the palm of one hand. In the other hand is a large electronic guitar pick. By pressing the buttons on the small pad, the player chooses chords. These chords are united with the sound of the pick in the other hand. The sound of the pick is sensitive to the energy of the arm motion. The guitar connects to a speaker through a smartphone or a tablet using Bluetooth. Jack Fuller is with Curve Music. He says that with just a few minutes of practice, someone who has never played a guitar can play simple music. Players can choose from 3 types of instruments: electric, acoustic, or bass guitar. Its inventors are now raising funds for mass production. That is planned to begin in March 2016. This is the science report. Humans need less sleep than other mammals, and that sleep has better results, according to a new study. Researchers at Duke University put together information on the sleep habits of hundreds of mammals, including 21 primate species. They found that humans need less sleep than chimps, macaques, and lemurs. Humans spend a greater part of sleep in deep stages that help the brain restore itself. The study also found that a human's sleep is higher quality. A deep stage of sleep called rapid eye movement, or REM, makes up 25% of a human's sleep. In primates like lemurs or monkeys, REM sleep is less than 5%. David Sampson, the study's co-author, said the shorter, higher quality sleep make humans special. Sampson's research team found that humans can do well with about 7 hours of sleep a day. Other primates need as many as 14 to 17 hours of sleep. Sampson said human sleep habits started changing during prehistoric times. Human ancestors moved from sleeping in trees to sleeping on the ground. Better sleeping habits meant better sleep in a shorter amount of time. Our ancestors slept near fire and in large groups for warmth and safety. This could have allowed them to get the most of their sleep in the shortest amount of time. That left more time for other activities like learning new skills. The study also notes that humans spend about 1/3 of their lifespan sleeping. For this is the health report. Now that the Chinese government has relaxed its one-child policy, China's fertility industry could benefit. China ended the country's one child per couple policy late last year. All married couples are permitted to have 2 children. The world's fertility clinics or medical centers should see an increase in business. Many couples face problems when trying to conceive or become pregnant. Other couples would like to select the gender of their child. The government does not permit gender selection or advanced fertility methods. Middle-class Chinese couples travel to Australia, Thailand, or the United States for fertility treatments. These foreign markets could benefit from an increased demand for fertility services. A fertility clinic in Thailand told VOA that the number of Chinese patients has nearly doubled in the past 3 years. The same clinic changed its business process to attract Chinese clients. The clinic hired a Mandarin-speaking staff and printed its documents in Mandarin. Sue Channon works for a fertility clinic in Sydney, Australia. She says there has been an increase in inquiries from Chinese couples. She says their doctors and staff in Australia speak Mandarin. China's one-child policy became law 35 years ago. The birth rate in China was too fast and too high. It reached 1 billion in 1982. Because of the policy, China has nearly 1.3 billion people. That is fewer than it would have without the limits on family size. For
This is the Technology Report. The Apollo 11 command module, named Columbia, went on an historic voyage in 1969. It took astronauts Neil Armstrong, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins to the moon and back. It is on display at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. But if you cannot get to Washington, you will be able to see Columbia on your computer or your smartphone. Digital scientists are scanning or taking pictures of the inside of the spaceship. They are creating an online model in 3 dimensions, or 3D. By looking at these photographs, you will be able to see the spacecraft the way the astronauts saw it. Scientists are using special 3D technology to scan it. They are not permitted to touch or climb inside the module. They use 5 cameras on long arms to take large 50-megapixel photographs. The thousands of photographs will be combined with the laser scans. All the images will be loaded into software that lets you look around the spaceship on a computer screen. The user will be able to see the Columbia both inside and out. The Smithsonian Institution says that the 3D technology gives a person ways to see things they cannot see at the museum. Adam Metallo is a 3D imaging specialist. He says that no one has been inside the module since it came to the museum. Now, he says, with this information, anyone in the world can view what it looks like inside this incredible piece of history. The virtual digital model will be available online by the middle of 2016. This is the Science Report. Scientists say a large percentage of bird species is in danger because bird habitats, or homelands, are disappearing. Traditional migration paths take birds through many countries. Some are not protecting the places where the birds stop, rest, and feed. The journal Science published a report by researchers from the Center of Excellence for Environmental Decisions in Australia. The scientists studied the migration or travel paths of almost 1,500 species of birds. They said that 91% of them passed through dangerous areas. The biggest danger for migratory birds is development. Building and paving now covers some of the natural areas where birds stop and feed as they move from one part of the world to another. Researchers say many of the small birds die along their migration route. There is no place for them to get energy for the next part of their journey. Countries in North Africa, Central Asia, and those along the coast of East Asia are having the most difficult time conserving land. The scientists say these countries do not have enough areas that are safe for birds. They say countries need to work together. They need to come up with safe stopover areas for birds that pass through their boundaries. Peter Mara, a scientist, told the Los Angeles Times that some habitats are changing. But, he says, more work can be done to make city areas safe for birds. He says small changes, like growing more native plants, could make a big difference. This is the Education Report. Choosing the right college is very important to students and their families. They look at rankings or lists of schools to make that choice. But rankings are not as simple as they seem. U.S. News and World Report uses information from more than 1,000 schools to create a list of the top universities. The Princeton Review and Forbes are also well-known lists that rank schools. U.S. News and World Report measures selectivity. Selectivity means that the school accepts a small percent of applicants. The applicants must have excellent academic records and very high test scores. The problem, says education expert Jonathan Rothwell, is that schools that are selective may benefit from better students. It does not mean that they provide the best education. Stacy Berg Dale and Alan B. Kruger are researchers. They looked at two groups of students with similar test scores. One group could have gone to the selective schools, but they chose to attend schools that were less selective. That group of students still made the same amount of money as the students who went to the selective schools. This suggests that it is the student, not the school, that creates the success. In 2013, the U.S. Department of Education announced a new plan for ranking colleges. It looks at the annual cost after financial aid, the school's graduation rate, and the annual salary for graduates. The Obama administration's goal is to give students information to help them choose the school that is right for them and avoid unnecessary loans.